Hello?
Jake, it's Mike.
What's up?
Are you awake?
Oh, I am now. It's like 2:30 in the morning. What's going on?
Well, I just finished the episode of Star Wars: The Clone Wars where they go to Mortis.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what the f***?
Hey, welcome back to Bantha Fodder. This is episode 9. I am Jacob Tender, and with me is my co-host, Mike Kamate. Mike, how are you today?
Blood red mad right now, to be honest with you.
Why is that?
Because I just finished that stupid arc in Clone Wars, and I'm so angry at it.
So you're watching chronologically, right? You start at the beginning and you're up to that point.
Release order, I guess, because they do jump around in time a lot.
Right. Yeah, okay. So chronologically as it aired.
Yeah.
So this is season 3.
Yeah, episode
15, 16, and 17, I believe.
Oh man. Oh, I'm already getting started.
You know, I think you'll be surprised as this episode goes on to find that we don't agree on something, Mike.
That's never happened before. And it's also very weird that I don't like something that we're talking about here, you know?
Yeah, and you called for this topic. This is all you.
I needed to get something off of my chest, and this is it, you know?
All right, well, now that you have me awake and I've got a Bloody Mary sitting here at my desk, let's dig into it.
Okay, well, we start with the first episode, Overlords, which I guess makes sense because the characters we meet in this episode are overlords of this domain that we're presented with. The setup for this episode is that our main characters, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and Anakin, are sent. They receive a distress call used by some ancient Jedi order that it hasn't been used in a long time, and they're going out to investigate this distress call. But they're also going to be meeting with...
Yeah, they're meeting up with Captain Rex, right? He's got a whole crew on another ship, and they're supposed to be meeting at some point in space.
And so they show up, they drop out of hyperspace, and it's just nothing. There's nothing there, vacant space. And Rex is also radioing in saying, okay, well, you know, here we are, we're here too. And they're like, no, you're not here. We don't see you. And then... from there, Ahsoka points out that there's this big, giant diamond object in front of them that they're about to crash into.
And what's that?
So, I guess my first question and my first issue with this whole arc is this mystical stuff going on here, or is it just that their computers are being messed around with?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's mystical. I mean... as we dig into this story arc, it's very much about the Force and like a very strong concentration of the Force and what the Force is channeling through. So I would say it is mystical interference with their junk.
Okay, so something mystical is causing them to occupy the same exact point in space that Rex and his Star Destroyer is occupying.
Yeah, because they're definitely at the same point.
So we're to assume that something mystical is going on here.
Right.
Okay, cool. So they're like, oh, well, no one is here. But look out in front of us. We have this thing, this giant diamond. This is, what they call it is an organic planet, but it doesn't look organic from the outside of it. It's just a giant diamond. Like what?
Yeah, I'm not sure where you getting the organic planet bit from.
One of them says it when they land, when they all after their crash landing or whatever goes on. No, they don't even crash land. They just wake up. They pass out.
Oh, right. When they pass out and then they wake up and they check their readings, it says that everything is organic.
Some kind of organic mass. All of our readings indicate that it's bigger than an asteroid. But at least the atmosphere is breathable.
Well, yeah, I just don't understand because this is a giant diamond in the sky, or in space.
I think their readings are talking specifically about their surroundings within this diamond. So it's unclear on how it's made up once they go inside of this, you know, like once the diamond kind of opens up a little bit and swallows them. Once they're kind of inside and they land... that is all organic. So that's all natural, you know, that's all life born of, I'm assuming, the Force.
So what is this giant diamond then that's covering a planet?
Well, that's what Mortis, I guess, made to keep his children in. He created it, and within it, the Force made everything kind of grow and come to be.
Okay, well, that is not explained correctly then in this episode. I mean, it's obviously they're being contained on this planet, but like you look out and there's stars around them when they're on the surface of this planet they land on.
Yeah, it's weird. Maybe that object itself isn't actually the planet. Maybe, once they go inside that, it's not necessarily a transporter, but kind of a gateway, maybe.
Okay.
And it takes them to another place where this thing exists. I mean, the theme of this whole story arc is these mystical beings existing there are very powerful, and they have much more control over the Force than anybody else that they know of so far. And the goal of the father is to keep the son and the daughter contained. So this is definitely a container of some sorts, but I think the biological and I guess astronomical makeup of that body is kind of ambiguous.
Well, I guess to me it just doesn't make sense. Like the design makes sense. Like I get what you're describing, a containment unit for these people, but as far as visually presenting that to us, I'm not getting it. And that's my first grievance with this, is that the setting is very unclear. But you also jumped into these characters that we're meeting on this planet. So these characters that we're meeting, the first one we meet is what resembles, I guess, the forest fairy from Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, I was gonna say she kind of looks like a Magic the Gathering card.
Oh my god.
That or a Pokemon of some sort.
She is very bright. She's glowing. She could be some Eevee evolution. I'm not really...
She looks like one of the Eevee evolutions. One of the ones that I'm not familiar with because I stopped some time around Ruby, but definitely one of those.
But yeah, she is humanoid. She is glowing. What color is she?
She's like white mostly.
Okay.
And then she's got like flowing green hair that just kind of like wafts about unnaturally. It doesn't really go with the wind. It just kind of like follows its own tune.
Okay.
But she kind of just shows up after they get out of their ship. She just kind of like walks up.
Right, which is right after Obi-Wan. He calls it extra dimensional when they land. Like we're some extra dimensional thing. Like they say that we are somewhere else.
I can't even lock down where in the galaxy we are, or if we are even in our own galaxy.
Which is okay. So now we have parallel universe in Star Wars, which is
not necessarily. I mean, like they kind of stick to the one galaxy as far as the Skywalker storyline goes. So, I mean, they could be in another universe, another galaxy, another universe. They're not sure where they are.
Okay, but dimensional implies off their plane of existence.
Yeah, perhaps, or in another point in time,
Right, which I'm going to get to later. Don't get me started on temporality, or whatever it is. Oh, God.
All right, we'll get there.
Okay, so they asked this glowing white Zelda princess if she is, or who she is, and she says that
we are the ones who guard the power. We are the middle, the beginning, and the end.
Glad she cleared that up for us.
Which they never really make it clear on who is who. If there are three figures that are the beginning, middle, and end here.
I think that's more mystical jargon than anything else.
Well, that's what I mean. It's jargon.
Because they use so many, like, I don't know. They describe these mystical beings in so many different ways, the light and the dark, the beginning and the end. Like, obviously that's all sort of biblical or mystical sounding, which makes it more interesting. It's supposed to set more of the tone for the story, I think, than to mean anything specific, at least with like the beginning and the end thing, because that was never made clear by the story arc, really. I never really got that.
I mean, we get a lot of biblical references in the prequel trilogy, specifically in terms of the virgin birth. But I mean, middle, beginning, and end, I think of Alpha and Omega from the Book of Revelations. I mean, there's no really middle described in Book of Revelations, but I am the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega.
Right. So they like start following her because they're supposed to be somewhere before it's dark, because otherwise
everything starts dying around them.
Yeah, because apparently this other guy who is her brother, this girl is referred to as the daughter for the remainder of this arc, and her brother is referred to as the son. So the son is exactly the opposite of the daughter. He's dark. He kind of looks like a Sith, and to me he kind of looks like the Inquisitor from Rebels. I know you haven't seen that yet, Mike, but listeners of the show might recognize him sharing very familiar features with the Inquisitor. I haven't really looked into that, but I thought that was kind of an interesting comparison there. So they're polar opposites, and obviously she wants to try to get them to her father, who is just referred to as father, I guess.
She calls him him,
right,
and I feel like
him.
It's him with a capital H at some point. But
yeah, that whole like biblical thing again. But I guess the basic idea is that there are three beings on this entire planet. So we have the father, we have the daughter, and we have the son. These three beings who are living on this planet, Mortis. And
we meet the son, who, just kind of messes with everything. Things are dying around them. It's not really clear whether he's making things die or if is it nightfall that's making things die?
I think it's synonymous.
Okay.
I think like they have their own part of the day. As they're like traveling around. Because like they said, the seasons change throughout the entire day there. So the seasons are changing within a day, and light and dark are kind of changing depending on who is in control of the scene, basically. I think it's more of a motif for the episode, and it's forgiven because it's this mystical place that's made up just for them.
Right. So Obi-Wan and Ahsoka get separated from Anakin because of a bunch of falling rocks caused by this Sith Lord appearing as a Sith Lord's son. And, so Anakin proceeds with the daughter. She tells him to stay here.
Yeah, but of course Anakin's not going to do that.
Right.
So he follows her back to this big castle up on a hill.
And then Obi-Wan and Ahsoka go and they meet the son. And he's just kind of like, oh, they go, you're a Sith Lord. And he's like,
Sith. Yes. And no.
Yeah, he's like yes and no because he
hates the Sith though. Like later on, he says he's like the Sith we will destroy the Sith. It's just so unclear what these characters are and aren't right now.
Well, I thought it came across pretty clear. He was saying like yes and no. Obviously, he has control over the Force, but he's much more than either Sith or Jedi, and that's basically what the father said. When Anakin made his way to the temple, he said the same thing. He's like, you're a Sith. Anakin was like kind of, he was pointing his lightsaber at him and he accused him of being a Sith. And the father was basically like, no, I'm a Force wielder. And that makes me more than the Sith or the Jedi. So that's where the difference between these three characters and the other Force-using characters that we've seen so far come into play. We have these three Force wielders, whereas Anakin and Ahsoka and Obi-Wan and all the other Jedi and Sith that we know so far, they're Force-sensitive and they're Force users, but they're not this higher echelon, this higher class of Force wielder. They're different.
Well, I think the father's explanation when Anakin meets him is a lot more simple, saying like, okay, yeah, we are Force wielders. It's very clear. He makes it very clear he is not a Sith. But to say, yes, I am a Sith, but no, I'm not also a Sith. I mean, he's being coy, so I get that. But it's part of the writing that just frustrates me about this entire episode.
So the scene that's set at this point is Anakin is now at this temple with the father, and Ahsoka and Obi-Wan have taken shelter in a cave because of acidic rain that they don't want to be caught in. So they're kind of camping out in there, waiting to hear from Anakin. In the meantime, all three of them are visited by apparitions.
So we have the first apparition, which is the first time I've seen this, which is Qui-Gon's ghost coming and appearing to Obi-Wan, which completely invalidates episode 3 to me at the end.
Why is that?
Well, isn't the big thing at the end of episode 3 that like they're like, oh, by the way, like is it Yoda talking to Obi-Wan being like, somebody came back, and figured out how to come back as a Force ghost, and they don't even show him, of course, because it's episode 3. They're like, oh, guess what? Someone came back as a Force ghost, and Anakin's like, oh, Master Obi-Wan, great, and here we are in way before the events of episode 3. Seeing a Force ghost, or that's what. Is it not a Force ghost?
Well, here it is. At the end of episode 3, if my recollection serves me correct, Yoda was explaining to Obi-Wan before he went into hiding that he needed to teach him how to commune with his former master. And obviously he's like, Qui-Gon? Like, I see the surprise there as forgivable, I guess, because while they're on Mortis, obviously the Force is very strong here. So it's not completely unlikely that something like this might happen. That Qui-Gon might appear to Obi-Wan as a Force ghost here, and he might be like, okay, like, cool, this is a thing that must happen. But obviously he doesn't have the abilities to commune with those who have become one with the Force outside of this place. So, sure, like, Qui-Gon has made his appearance here, but that doesn't mean that when Obi-Wan leaves this place, he gets to talk to Qui-Gon whenever he wants. So when he hears that Yoda has been in touch with Qui-Gon in episode 3 outside of Mortis, that's a big deal. You know, that means the communication between those that have passed on and those that are still living, a connection can be made there while outside of a place that's so strong with the Force as this place is.
I don't know. This whole thing to me just kind of seems like the writers are just like, I don't know, I guess we got to throw in Qui-Gon to this one now or something like that. I mean, I get the need to have Qui-Gon in this picture, you know, because he's talking about Anakin's prophecy, him being the one. So, like, I totally get the need for it, but it seems to take away from what happens later on in episode 3 to me, you know, just... Ugh.
Well, we're kind of getting... I mean, obviously all of them are seeing somebody. Obi-Wan's seeing Qui-Gon, Anakin sees an apparition of his mother, and Ahsoka, you know, she sees herself. And a future version of herself, no less. So obviously everybody's kind of getting something that's really important to them. And for Obi-Wan, his master is important to him personally, but it's also important to the story. And I think it's interesting. I like Qui-Gon as a character. I think it's disappointing that he got so little time in the story because he played such a big part into setting all of these things into motion. That's not saying that I want a Qui-Gon solo flick.
Oh, I do. I want it more than the Han Solo one. Oh my god.
A young Qui-Gon? I'm not too sure about that.
I just need to validate that character somehow because episode 1 didn't do it.
But he plays his part. You know, he comes back in, he reintroduces the ideas from episode 1 that Anakin is special, he's the chosen one, he still believes that, and that kind of sets the tone for the remainder of this episode. It kind of justifies the ideas that these mystical beings have as, you know, it's not just their idea. Like, obviously other people think this as well, and it's this episode more than anything else in the series that really gave me an indication that, yeah, maybe Anakin was the chosen one. For me, the question has always remained, when they say he's going to bring balance to the Force, what does balance mean? And that's the question that I just keep asking as this episode goes on and on. So let's keep going. So we got Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan.
Well, I think one of Qui-Gon's lines here is pretty important to understanding Mortis, or Mortis, as I give it that little flair. So Qui-Gon describes, Obi-Wan says, what is this place? And Qui-Gon says,
a conduit through which the entire force of the universe flows.
I don't know if a place can be strong with the Force. Like, is a planet strong with the Force, or is a temple strong with the Force? Like, Dagobah was strong with the Force, but was that Yoda's presence? That was...
I like to think that it's the place and not the people. I think it's like points in the universe where, you know, the Force manifests itself into something physical. So Dagobah, yeah, it's a strong place. This place is strong as well. So I'd like to think that this is a conduit where the Force physically manifests itself and releases itself, and that's why it's such a important place for the father to keep the son and daughter, because it's.
But does that make it a physical place in the universe?
Somewhere.
But they went to the same coordinates.
But not necessarily one place. I mean, it's the Force. Like, you know, the Force has always been. It
is a terrible cop-out. I hate that George Lucas did this.
I mean, it's the same thing for any sort of mystical power, like magic in Harry Potter, religion. Like, I hate to... I don't mean to offend anybody with that, but you know what I'm saying? Like, in stories like this, fictional stories where they're using something that's a higher power than us as humans, they're using that as the cop-out for the story. And it's forgivable because... we know what we're reading.
Right.
We know what we're getting into.
Yeah, I guess we know that I mean, the Force up until this point, there's mind tricks, there's physical things that we can do. We can shoot lightning out of our fingers. We can make lightsabers come to us. We can move objects, push people, a whole bunch of other things I'm forgetting about. But, as far as like transportation to different universes and like, I don't know, I guess. Okay, I'm stuck on something we've already moved past. I'm sorry for that.
That's all right. Moving on. So back with Anakin at the temple, he gets an apparition as well. This one is his mother. And to keep it short, I think the one takeaway quote there was,
"It is time you realize that your guilt does not define you, my son. You defined your guilt."
And this is an ongoing theme already in this episode. I mean, at this point, we're only moments into the episode itself, but the beginning of it, as the Clone Wars always does, they show a quote, and that quote was, "Balance is found in the one who faces his guilt." So now we have two distinct quotes referring to guilt, and that's going to come into play pretty soon once everybody kind of makes their way back together in the plot.
I mean, is it possible that the son is just the apparition in all these cases? I mean, it'd be weird, I guess, to make it Obi-Wan, but I mean, Ahsoka is manipulated by her older self, which, I mean, I could see that as being a son apparition, and Shmi it's definitely, I think it's confirmed to be a son apparition, right? It's him.
I'm not sure about these ones. I mean, the son obviously does change shape later on, but I'm not so sure about these first ones, because these more...
Doesn't the father say, like, "Oh, that was my son. My bad. Don't worry about that."
My son, I suspect. We can take many forms. The shapes we embody are merely a reflection of the life force around us.
Qui-Gon stated facts, or rather his view of the facts. And the mother, I could see that. With Ahsoka, I'd say not, because Ahsoka's apparition was more warning her of the perils of the dark side rather than trying to lure her to it. So I'd say that, I think that these three apparitions were more to inform the characters of like exactly what's at play here and what they're going to be facing from this point forward.
Okay, fine. Well, okay, so back to the Shmi scene, where I mean, okay, so we have some dialogue going on here. I think it's on par with like episode 2 dialogue here as far as writing goes.
"I tasted only vengeance when I slaughtered so many to avenge your death."
Yeah, I mean, some of the writing it's a little corny, but it is a kid's show,
It is a kid's show, like there are adult elements to it. I mean, there's one episode where they're like torching people with a flamethrower and showing it, torching aliens, I guess. But I mean, It is a kid's show. I understand that it's a cartoon it was Cartoon Network. So it's just like, the dialogue is not going to be, Mad Men level or whatever, but
yeah, it's not sinister. Like it's supposed to convey those feelings, but not in such an evil way.
It just, his delivery. There are points in this series, in the entire Clone Wars, where I'm like, okay, this Anakin is totally different from the episode 2, episode 3 Anakin that we're familiar with. But this is one of the episodes where I'm like, oh, this is definitely Hayden Christensen as a CG character happening right now. Not that it's Hayden Christensen's fault. I just, he was obviously given a script. But, I just... This is particular where I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely see this Anakin being Hayden Christensen.
Yeah, the production of this character walks that line.
For sure.
I think this is definitely the best representation of Anakin, and I think that this show has given us more interesting and entertaining looks at him. In the way that Anakin's character builds, I think that we see a lot of that growth in the Clone Wars where we don't see it in the prequel films.
Right.
But
he's wisecracking most of the time. He's kind of flippant, In this one, I see the same the melodrama that we see in the movies, and that's kind of like, I don't know how much I should expect from a cartoon show, but it's still something that bothered me, amongst many other things.
Ahsoka's apparition.
Oh, so she gets warned by her future self,
who's wearing the same exact clothing.
Is that what she wears in Rebels?
I don't know. She might change her clothes by then, but this apparition's wearing the same exact outfit that she's currently wearing. It's just, tailored to be a little bit bigger. So this apparition comes to her and says that
I am your future, your potential.
I grabbed a couple quotes from this because I thought that this was really interesting, because I think Ahsoka is one of the better characters to watch in this story.
Yeah.
Obviously, the prequels and Clone Wars are very much about Anakin, but they did a really great job of kind of lifting out some of the other characters, kind of built their stories up a little bit, and Ahsoka becomes very important later on. So looking back at this now, having seen the entirety of the Clone Wars and having seen some of her in Rebels, it was really interesting to kind of get this foreshadowing that, this apparition is coming to her to give. She said,
"There is a wildness to you, young one. Seeds of the dark side planted by your master. Do you feel it?"
So whether or not Ahsoka has said in any way that she feels that Anakin is going down a darker path, this apparition is coming to her. Maybe it's part of her subconscious. Maybe it actually is a vision from the future. It's hard to say, right? Like so much of this is just up in the air. It's completely ambiguous because this place is very strange. But this kind of plants the seed in Ahsoka's mind that maybe Anakin isn't necessarily following the right path, and even though she trusts him, like, is he doing the right thing?
Well, I mean, there's that line.
"Be warned. You may never see your future if you remain his student. Leave this planet."
So basically, like, whether or not she's thinking this subconsciously or some part of the Force is coming out and actively warning her, I think that's interesting, because either way, like, if it's her subconscious, like, that's a part of Ahsoka that we haven't learned about so far in the series. And if it's the Force, that's really interesting, because that calls into question the whole balance and the Chosen One thing. Because if the Force is warning people to stay away from Anakin because he's bad news, how is he supposed to be the Chosen One? And that's where the whole balance thing comes back into question. And I hate to keep bringing that up and teasing it, but like, that's always been my biggest question with Anakin being the Chosen One. Like, what is balance? And everybody seems to have a different idea of what that balance is. To me, I always felt that to have balance in the Force, you have to have equal parts dark and light. So when Anakin becomes Vader, that's not him turning away from his role in the galaxy as the Chosen One. That's him fulfilling his destiny, becoming the dark side himself. Like, that's him embodying his role in the universe. It's to bring balance back to the Force, where there is dark and there is light, and they're constantly at battle, and that give and take, that push and pull, trying to maintain that even keel. Like, that's what the balance is always meant to me, and that's why I personally love this story arc, because it calls into question all of these things. And I know it's really,
but it never defines anything.
It doesn't.
It calls things into question, but I think it's doing it out of lack of grasp, or not lack of grasp, but just being like, oh, we got to fill 22 minutes of TV with this stuff. So like,
well, it's not just 22 minutes; it's 3 entire episodes. This is a planned arc.
Too long, if you ask me, man. If they just left it at the first third of this thing, and they get on the thing and they fly away, I would have not called you at 2 a.m. trying to get you to do this. Oh God, dude.
Well, I'll forgive you for that, but I think that they had to, they had to draw it out.
They didn't have to draw it out. There's no need,
because it's too much of the story to do in one episode. You can't put all of this information and all of this like mystical backstory about the Force itself and shove it into one episode. That would be ridiculous. Like,
but they did, and after they're I mean, spoiler alert, they take off. Like they get. I mean, we'll get to the things in between, but they get off this planet, and then they come back to it. It's not a planet. It's an extra dimensional thing, which is what we're. Oh God, there's so many conflicting parts of this script and of this whole concept that's just what bothers me about the whole thing, is that it just.
Well, that's Star Wars.
No, it's not. It's Clone Wars.
That's the thing. I mean, with the Force, like, it's ambiguous.
No,
again, it's this time old question. Like, what does balance mean? Like, if I'm asking you this question right now, Mike, to you, what does balance in the Force mean? What does that mean to you?
Balance in the Force. Okay, so if you look at Anakin as the Chosen One, balance in the Force to me means vanquishing the Sith, because I see the Jedi as neutral beings, even though, as much as we paint them as like the light side of the Force, I see the Jedi as trying to keep like an even keel throughout the entire thing they're doing. I mean, if you look at old non-canon games like Knights of the Old Republic or something like that, they're supposed to be like just, mediators between things. So based on that, I see neutrality, that the Jedi keep the Force balanced. I don't know know what the unbalanced light side would be, but I as far as like I see the Sith throwing the Force out of balance, and by Anakin becoming Darth Vader and, getting close to Palpatine, the final confrontation on the Death Star 2, throwing Palpatine to the core, he kills the Sith and then he dies himself. The Sith are gone. Until, episode 7, obviously, that's something else. But I see the Force as hypothetically being balanced by Vader sacrificing himself in killing the last Sith, and neutrality reigns again.
I think that's where the contention comes into play.
Right. Which I get. I get that totally.
I think a lot of people agree with you. I think most people probably agree with you, but in my opinion, the Jedi, they're an overwhelming force in the galaxy at the time of the just before the Clone Wars. I mean, they're all over. The Jedi Temple is massive, and their body of students and knights, they're very large, and they're all over.
Right.
In contrast, there are only 1 to 2 Sith at any given time. I would call that an unbalance, because to me, the Jedi, theoretically, they were a neutral force, and that's what they always claimed to be. But I think what we learned above all else in the prequel trilogy was that the Jedi were not perfect, and that they had fallen away from their values, and they were assuming control over things that they shouldn't have been assuming control over if they meant to be a neutral third party.
Right, and by vanquishing the Sith and, Order 66 and everything like that gets rid of all the Jedi, you leave no one. I mean, obviously, this Kanan, I guess, I haven't watched Rebels, but there's Kanan kind of exists in the background, right, while all this is happening. But it leaves Luke to start anew, and that is the balance. Like, Luke, to me, is the embodiment of the balanced Force.
Well, it's the beginning of the next pull. It's a push and pull. So if the Jedi are to embody the light side before the Clone Wars, and then the Clone Wars eradicate the Jedi and bring the dark into the major role in the galaxy, then once Luke and the Rebellion come in and sweep out the Empire and take out Vader and the Emperor, then we got the light side back in control, and that's when the First Order comes in. It's a constant push and pull in the galaxy, and that's where balance comes into play. I think it's a myth that there's balance. I think that it's a constantly tipping scale.
I don't know, because Luke is so dark, though. That's the thing, is that, Luke is so walking the line between the dark and the light in Return of the Jedi. And so I see the balancing the Force as like this is literally a dude who is balancing on the Force. Like, you see his anger, you see his fury when he's attacking Vader, and his hatred, and then he kind of keeps it in check. He's like, no, I will not, kill my father. And then Palpatine goes at him, and that's why I see Luke as the embodiment of the balance of the Force, because he is somebody who's made up so equally of the dark and the light that he's going to be the new face of the Force going forward. Like, Vader's out, Luke is in. This is the new Force, and that's balance to me.
Well, if the galaxy is clouded by the dark side at this point, if the major force in the galaxy is dark, Luke kind of embodies what everything is hinging on. We have the Rebellion that is trying to take care of the Empire and get them out of power so that they can restore peace to the galaxy as they see it. While in the meantime, the Empire believes that they're bringing peace to the galaxy. Whether or not that's the intention of the Emperor, obviously we know that that's not the case, but many of those within the Empire themselves are not inherently evil. They're all innocent people who are following this code that they think is supposed to be doing good for the galaxy. So when Luke is kind of teetering on the dark side and the light side, he is he's a single embodiment of the bigger struggle. So then when the tides turn and Luke casts his lightsaber aside and says that he won't kill his father, that's him switching over. And that's when Vader himself switches back to the light side at the very end, and the Emperor is destroyed and the light side wins. And then out of the small reaches of the galaxy where the First Order start to grow, that darkness starts to build again, and the whole cycle just goes on and on.
I guess, but there's so much about Luke we don't know. I mean, a lot of what we're assuming about Luke's light-sidedness is from the EU, and that's not anything anymore. All we have to go on right now is literally Luke on a mountain, or like on a big mountain island, turning and looking at Rey, right? I mean,
that and that we knew that he was, trying to rebuild the Jedi Order.
Exactly. But we don't know, like what his teachings are like. We don't know if he's like, yes, there is power in the dark side a little bit, but like, I don't know. Again, this is hypothesizing on stuff we don't know, which is ultimately useless. And we're very far off topic.
Yeah, we got back. Let's try to pull back in. But, what we're talking about here is the grander theme of this 3-episode story arc. It's all about balance, and it's embodied by basically the son and the daughter, the light and the dark.
So I guess, so speaking of those characters, the son and the daughter and the father, they're called Force wielders. They're not Sith, they're not Jedi, they're just super strong Force people. Are they mortals?
No. Well, I mean,
they can die.
They are mortal. Yeah, obviously they are mortal, but in the term, in the idea that they could. Yes.
Okay, so they can die.
Yes.
So they
are
die.
because they can die. Obviously, they can die because that's sort of why they're there. The father brings Anakin there because he believes that he is, supposed to be the chosen one, and the father is dying and wants Anakin to stay there and replace him.
Yeah, Anakin's going to be the new father, I guess, or something like that.
Yeah, he's going to be the guy that's going to watch over his son and daughter and keep them in control.
And here's where another extra dimensional kind of thing comes in. The father's quote, he says,
"Therefore it was necessary to withdraw from the temporal world and live here as anchorites."
As a sanctuary?
And a prison.
So temporal is, of time, of where time is of the essence, or where time precedes over everything. Time governs our existence in a way, and I guess so. They've withdrawn. So Mortis, it's not a place in the galaxy, I guess, or in the universe even.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Where I think time comes into play with that. I think once they pass through into that, that big prism diamond thing in the middle of space, they're crossing into this area that exists, but not necessarily within the time that they were in before.
Extra dimensional, or
exactly. We see that at the end too.
Okay, so what's this deal of escape then? This is where it's bringing me to. Is like, so if these people are mortal, but they withdrew from the temporal plane, are if this is all this kind of stuff, like they exist out of time, they're another dimension shared by Force ghosts, future ghosts, shape-shifting Force wielders, because the son and the daughter, they can shapeshift into this griffin creature, into this bat demon kind of thing, which is not something we've seen in any Star Wars thing. And again, we can't be,
it's much more fantasy than sci-fi,
exactly.
right?
And I've never said that, I've never held the belief that Star Wars is sci-fi. Sci-fi and science fantasy is always what Star Wars has been to me.
Well, I mean, look, the original posters are very much like, the book covers that you see in the fantasy section of your used bookstore. It's a guy with a very muscular chest holding up a sword into the air while a scantily clad woman clings to his leg. And
for sure, no, and I totally get that. So I'm not picking apart science facts here. I just want to know that this is something we've never seen in Star Wars before. Is extra dimensional, unless you look at the non-canon things. Again, like Knights of the Old Republic, there is a moment in that game where you go extra dimensional. So I think that's interesting, but this is something they're introducing as canon now. And, so what is the big deal with dying in this world then? So if Anakin, if Ahsoka, if Obi-Wan, if they die on this temporal plane, is this like Nightmare on Elm Street? Are they dead? Is this, or is this the Matrix? Are they, if you die in the Matrix, do you die in real life? Is this, what are the consequences here?
They never say explicitly, but I thought about this a little bit, and I would assume that if they were to die on Mortis, then they are essentially dead. Their body will still exist back in their own time. That's shown at the end of this episode, or at the end of this arc, when they leave Mortis and they're back on their ship and they're back where they were supposed to be, and this time Rex and his crew are there, and they're all in the same spot. They're exactly where they were when they left, and it's only been a matter of moments. It was just basically a glitch on their end.
It was just a dream.
It was a dream, but I think, being that this is a
shared dream,
a place, a conduit of the Force, Mortis, that if they were to die there, they would be, again, one with the Force, but their body would still exist in their own time. So I think they would be gone. Like, the thing that makes them, their soul, I guess, would be gone.
So just 3 dead bodies floating in a shuttle cockpit, and Rex is like, oh, what happened here?
Yeah, that would be something to explain to Master Windu.
God.
Like, we just showed up and they were just dead.
They all just died for no reason.
So that was the thing.
I get it, but what will because their whole goal is to get back to their ship and escape from Mortis. And what is so? Where are they going to escape to?
Well, they tried to leave. Right? They tried to leave initially. They tried to get on their ship and leave, and that's when the Son basically came aboard the ship and stole Ahsoka and took her back.
He just teleports onto that ship. Like he just appears on that ship. So what is why? If again, we're going to jump ahead really quickly in the plot here. The issue here is that the Son is going to try and escape this dimension or planet or whatever this is, and he needs the spaceship. It gets explicitly stated that he needs their spaceship to do this, which doesn't make sense to me, because where are they flying to? There's an open sky in front of them, but they didn't come from they flew into a diamond, and
well, I think they were given the illusion that they had a choice. I think. I don't think the Father was actually going to just let them go like that. I think he knew that something was going to bring them back, whether the Force was going to play its part, and it was going to bring them back to Mortis in whatever way that it did. And that eventually ended in his demise when the Son takes Ahsoka, brings her back, sort of poisons her, makes her almost like a zombie slave. That was kind of weird. That scene in the jail cell when that creepy house elf kind of just bites her. I'm like, Dobby, what are you doing, Dobby? It kind of looks like Winky or Dobby or any of those Harry Potter house elves, and he just kind of bites her, and then he turns back into himself. Like, it's the Son shape shifting, and then Ahsoka fights Anakin, and there's all this struggle. The Son keeps breeding contention between Ahsoka and Anakin and Obi-Wan by turning them against each other and trying to tear them apart so that he can, I guess, destroy them or bring them to his cause so that he can leave and spread his darkness throughout the galaxy. And that's what the Father and his sister were trying to stop.
I mean, they saw Anakin's power. In the first episode of this arc, we see Anakin balancing the light and the dark. He tames them both and brings them to their knees.
Which is pretty cool, in my opinion. I thought that scene was sick.
Honestly, when that episode ended, I was like, okay, just another episode in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Awesome. And then the 2 episodes ensued, and I was very upset. Because I was like, okay.
Maybe they could have done it in 2.
They could have done it in 1. Honestly, if they just left that planet after he tames the light and the dark, I'm the chosen one. I have to go. I can't stay here. I have to go do things in the galaxy. Super. But so the Son, after the Son sees Anakin's power, and the Son chooses the dark side, even though it's demonstrated that Anakin can balance the light and the dark. But even that, though, the Son says that light and dark are too simple, so is it that the daughter is the light? I don't think she is. They say it's light and dark is too simple, so it's not as simple as the daughter is the light side and the Son is the dark side. These are 2 people. These are 2 entities that exist in this universe, children of the Father, which begs the question, who's the mother? But we don't have to get into that. We can say the mother's the Force or something like that. I don't really know. The best thing I could come up with as far as who the siblings represent is that the daughter is selflessness and the Son is selfishness.
My nature is to do what is selfless, but my brothers will always be to do what is selfish.
And that is 2 things that can ebb and flow, like whether you have one or the other can lead you farther into the light, farther into the dark.
Yeah, and that's mentioned too. I mean, the Father said that he's worried that his Son is, he's walking that line, and he's growing closer and closer to the dark side, and that's kind of worrying him.
And the Son approaches the dark side.
Yeah, and I think he gets there.
Oh, he definitely crosses over.
He reaches that boiling point where he's just kind of sick of his father's speeches, and that's when he attacks him.
So the issue is that the Son will escape, and he will wreak havoc on the universe, and that's...
Yeah, maybe not necessarily himself, destroying everything, but, the way that the Force flows through him will seep into the galaxy and, throw things out of balance.
I can't even imagine the consequences of this kid, this person getting loose. I can see him as disrupting the events that we know to be canon at this point. It's hard to conceptualize the idea of him leaving
this place and going into the galaxy and what exactly that would mean.
Right.
Because it's not so simple as that to say that anybody who, well, exactly what will happen to everybody out there. Because, he says very clearly that he would destroy the Sith. He would destroy the Jedi. He
would bring peace.
He promises peace. And, everybody has their own idea of that. And that's where perspectives come into play. Like, it just depends on which way you look at it. But what's he going to do? And we don't know. And that's dangerous. Obviously, we know that this man this being is dangerous. So they have to stop it. They know that they can't leave without stopping it, or at least that's what Anakin believes. Obi-Wan kind of just wants to like get the hell out. Like he's like, well, it's not our problem. Let's just leave. But Anakin's like, no, we have to get this.
Absolutely a valid goal for Obi-Wan there. I just don't understand. They have so many opportunities to leave this planet, and again, leaving, not defined.
I think Anakin has a lot of questions of who he is himself. He's told time and time again by everybody who meets him that he is the chosen one.
Yeah, we found, and he is. Great. We just validated. Episode 1, done. He's the chosen one. Super.
But that's called into question.
Is it? He's told he's the chosen
one. I think it is.
Like,
I think
you are definitely the chosen one. You balance the dark and the light. You balance my son and my daughter. You can stay here.
Right. It's the father that's telling him that. But the father doesn't always seem to be right. And that's shown in the 3rd episode of this arc when his kids are completely out of his control. He loses control over his son. Anakin can't control his son, and everything goes awry. And it's seemingly that all hope is lost.
But that's when the daughter reveals to Obi-Wan this dagger, this sword.
Yeah, they're down in this like crypt. They have this sword, and Obi-Wan has to go down there and grab it. And, this sword...
What is that?
Is the only thing that can... It's the only thing that can kill the sun, apparently. It's like killing a vampire with a stake.
But it absolutely does not kill the sun in the end.
Well, yeah, it does.
No, it doesn't. Anakin's lightsaber goes right through him and it kills him.
Oh, that's right. It wasn't the sword. It was the lightsaber, wasn't it?
No, this is what I'm saying about this entire arc, is that everything is totally arbitrary that is put into this thing.
Yeah, you could probably take out everything that regards that knife. And, well, I mean, the knife does kill the daughter. I guess that's kind of important.
And it kills the father, too, but it doesn't kill the son. They're like, you can control... I mean, like, if you want to get really out there, not super out there, but if you want to get to, like, oh, well, like, well, what if the sword that they show him, it kills the father, so in a way that controls the son and then allows Anakin to pierce him with a lightsaber. Like, okay, so there we go. Cool, we made sense of the sword, but also super arbitrary, made me angry.
Well, the father killing thing is a good point. I'm glad you bring that up, because I kept thinking about that more and more than anything else in this entire arc, because the father killing thing is a big deal in the Star Wars universe.
Well, before you jump to that, so okay, so killing the father, it's a big thing for sure. What does the son in this case have to gain from his father's death? When it's Luke and the Emperor chiding Luke to kill his father, Luke is going to step up and become, Sidious's apprentice and just, rule the galaxy, yada yada. What does the son have in this instance of killing his father?
Well, he can leave.
He can leave, but this was clearly a threat before he killed the father. The father is worried that the son is going to leave while he's still alive. He's like, I don't know about you guys, but I think my son is going to be leaving this planet pretty soon. So can you just not let him do that?
I don't know. I wonder if that was like a real threat, or if, again, he was trying to keep them there. He was trying to sabotage the ship to keep Anakin there so that he would play his part. Because obviously these beings are more powerful than this like old hunk of junk that they were flying. Like it's just a freighter. This is not a special thing that can like teleport in and out of temporal shifts at whim.
Well, the sun can clearly do that. So this ship doesn't make any sense.
Well, the son can't leave until the father's dead. That seemed to be pretty clear to me. So whether or not like he actually needed the ship to leave, I don't know. So once the father was dead, like that tossed everything back up into the air, because obviously he's kind of free at that point, but is that really what he wanted? Like, he's not entirely dark. He was kind of walking that line, and even though he kind of embodies the dark side in this allegory of the Force, but it's all really complex. Like, I mean, we're supposed to waffle back and forth on our ideas and our conceptions of how the Force works, because it's not clearly defined. There's no definition of the Force, because it's this unnatural entity that nobody can fully control. The Force has its own way, and it changes things as it needs to be changed to keep balance.
Yeah, I get it.
So once the son, kind of forces the father's hand to kill him, it kind of takes his power away, because to really become evil, like we talked about so many times with Kylo Ren, you got to kill your dad, right?
Apparently.
So he couldn't do that. He took that away from him. He took that away, that like that thing that was going to free him not only from the planet, but like from his father. His father took that like last bit of I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Rebellion, The father killing himself with the dagger takes that away from the son. He's saving his son in a way because he doesn't want his son to kill him. And also that's like, it kind of stuns him. He doesn't expect it. And he was kind of like, he needed that to kind of give him that last bit of power to up and leave and to, take control of everything. So taking that away from him, it put the whole plan on pause. And that's what allowed Anakin to come in and, kill him with the lightsaber. And
well, before jumping to that third episode, there's in the second episode, there's that whole lightsaber battle between Ahsoka and Anakin, which I think was one of the best in the series so far as lightsaber battles go.
Oh, she's so cool. She has so many cool moves.
There's that move that Ahsoka does with she uses her two blades. She digs them into the ground. Mm-hmm. Anakin force pushes her, and she digs her two lightsabers into the ground to keep traction as she's being pushed away.
Love that. I also like the one where she kind of like, runs up Anakin and does her little flip. That was sick.
I saw a lot of like Force Awakens type lightsaber battles, which is more, original trilogy type things, swinging the sword wildly and just hammering on your opponent, as opposed to like doing flips and time 2-on-1 fighting and stuff like that. This is, I saw it was a really nice battle. I mean, there are flips for sure, but
yeah.
Oh man, that digging the lightsabers into the ground for traction thing, that was
really cool.
It was awesome. Okay, so after that lightsaber battle, stuff happens. Nothing of importance.
Yeah, just like minor conflict between.
Well, the daughter dies. Nothing important until the daughter dies.
Yeah.
And the father says as she's on her way out,
"Evil has been unleashed, and the dark side shall consume her."
So is that what dying is in this planet? Is dying turning to the dark side?
Well, I mean, darkness is a lack of light, and if anybody has any light in them, that's to say that they are alive. So, sure.
Okay. So death is the dark side. Again, we're like we're throwing all of these like conflicting.
They're throwing it on so
thick. It's not even thick. It's I think it's a thin coat, but it's so many varying thin coats on this one thing. They're taking these super abstract terms that we've dealt with for the past 40 years or something, and just like being like, okay, so now the light and the dark is you have to balance the Force, and the light and the dark is dying and or selfishness, or is it selflessness, and it's just so many conflicting ideals. And Ahsoka, how does she end up on the ground?
I think the son was basically just like, I don't need you anymore, and just kind of like flicked his hand to the side, and she just kind of like fell, and she's kind of like, dead.
So they do a big transfer, and Ahsoka's back, and yay.
Yeah, daughter's gone, Ahsoka's back. Like, it's wrapping the story arc up so that everybody who came there alive can leave there alive, and everybody, that was like keeping the balance of the Force while they were alive will remain keeping the balance while dead. Because, whether they're there or not, it doesn't matter.
And that's when the father says,
"You must go now. He needs your ship to leave the planet. You must leave before he can take it."
And I'm like, oh, why does he need the ship? I'm sorry, this ship is really grinding my gears here. This is the point where my roommate walks into the room and he just goes, "What is that old dude? Is that just the guy from Adventure Time, the Ice King?" He looks just like the Adventure Time Ice King.
Kind of does. I mean, he's very wizardly.
He is very wizardly. He's the blue and the beard. I mean, there's so much more to this, like Anakin, even after they're released by the father, they choose to come back again. Like the father's like, "You need to get out of here." Like, okay, cool. Episode ends. Next episode starts. And then Anakin's like, "I gotta go back." And okay, fine. Like Obi-Wan's like, "Don't do that." Anakin's like, "I'm gonna do it anyway," which is typical for Clone Wars. He goes back, and he runs into Qui-Gon. And Anakin's like, I have to kill the son. I just got to kill this guy, and I need to go get the Father's blessing to go kill his son so that he can't wreak havoc on the galaxy. And he's like, so I have to kill him so I don't join him. And Qui-Gon says,
neither. Look deeper. You will find another way.
So this is like the second time this Force ghost apparition being of Qui-Gon is appearing to somebody, which is definitely voiced by Liam Neeson also. This is absolutely Liam Neeson. He has nothing else going on. He's coming in to voice this cartoon character. Which is, I think, awesome. So yeah, I mean, like, he says, you will find another way to Anakin. And lo and behold, he does not find another way. Anakin absolutely kills the son. Without a lot of conflict, I think. I don't think he has any problem with that lightsaber going right through his back.
Yeah.
But between the death of the son and this apparition, we have Anakin actually joining up with the son. Like, so Anakin does end up going with the son on this one. And he does this because the son says, like, here, check out the future. I'm just going to show you right now. And we have this whole montage of everything that happens in the subsequent movies, episode 3. I guess pretty much just episode 3, and we culminates with the Imperial March theme playing in the background and a big smoky Darth Vader appearing and the breathing apparatus that Darth Vader has. And Anakin is he's like, no, I hurt so many people, I kill Padme, like, so I have to make this stuff not happen. And so he joins up with the son because the son promises that none of this will happen if he joins up with him, which I think is like, okay, that is the most concrete thing we've been given this whole thing. There's motivation there for this character. Anakin's like, I have to stay here, or I have to join up with this son, and everything. Like, that is what I see as being like a good story point here, is that this being presents Anakin with something, with consequence, and Anakin's like, I'm going to do something for this not to happen. Great. Rather than this whole like, should I stay or should I go kind of thing, or should I come back now even though I've been told to go.
Well, I think maybe this is his destiny. You know, if he is the chosen one and he's supposed to bring balance to the Force, maybe this is his shot. And maybe this is where he changes his fate by, all these events culminating in the death of these 3 beings that were previously keeping the Force in balance. And then, he just kind of like pieces out, and then his future becomes what he saw. Is that a possibility?
No, that's what I'm saying. Is if Anakin leaves with Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, things are going to be bad. So he's like, okay, if I leave with this son instead, and that's why he lures Obi-Wan into a volcano and pushes his speeder into the lava, so that Obi-Wan has to just live the rest of his life inside this volcano. And like that is his goal, is just to flee the planet, not with Obi-Wan and Ahsoka anymore, with the son, and go vanquish the Sith. The son says, we are going to bring peace to the galaxy. And Anakin's like, well, peace sounds great, and I don't have to kill Padme and the people I love. Awesome. Let's do this. He just believes the future that is shown to him, which it must be a very convincing apparition.
Well, I mean, it's essentially the same future that he's promised by the Emperor later. Either way, he was going to succumb to the same thing. Whether he were to do it with the son or do it with the Emperor, the results are the same. I don't think that would actually change anything. I think the only thing that would change the future as we know it would be for him to stay there and to, control everything. But at that point, it doesn't matter because the daughter is dead. And
no, I don't think it's the same, because Anakin sees everything. Like, this is a giant spoiler for Anakin's life. Like, this is the plot of his life ruined. Being like, if you leave this planet right now, you are going to, your wife is going to die, you're going to betray Obi-Wan, and this guy in a robe who looks, like the Phantom Menace here, he's going to be shooting lightning out of his head or something like that.
I don't see how it's any different, though. I mean, in either case, he's going to kill Jedi, and it's going to destroy his wife's image of him and lead her into a deep depression that's eventually going to kill her.
That's if he leaves with Obi-Wan and Ahsoka. If he leaves with the son is just going to go kill the Sith.
No, that's what I'm saying. If the son is saying, I want you to come with me, and together we can destroy the Jedi, we can destroy the Sith, and bring peace to the galaxy, it doesn't matter. That's the same promise that the Emperor was making, because you have to remember, at this point, the Emperor is kind of like, the Emperor was outside of this entire thing. Of course, he was the puppeteer of everything, and he was very much involved, but in either case, Anakin under the Emperor or Anakin under the Son is going to kill the Jedi. He's going to kill any remaining Sith. Like, he's just wiping everybody out for the chance of peace. And in doing so, he kills Padme.
I don't think it's the same prophecy at all, or like the same future at all, because if he goes to the sun, Sidious dies, and the Sith are vanquished, the Jedi are vanquished, everybody is like this neutrality. I think that's balancing the Force, if anything, but
it doesn't change him, though.
It does, because he doesn't become Darth Vader.
Maybe he doesn't end up in a suit. Maybe he doesn't take on the name Lord Vader,
which is what his issue is. That's his whole thing. That's why he gets upset, is because he's like, oh, I have to go with the sun, so I don't become this Darth Vader character, because I don't think
Darth Vader is the thing that like really, that really scares him.
It is, absolutely, because everything happens because he becomes Darth Vader. Padme dies, he betrays Obi-Wan, he betrays the Jedi in that tower with Palpatine when Palpatine gets turned into a monster mush.
But Padme is going to die either way because of the same result.
Why?
Because Anakin's destroying everything with this bad guy. He's not the person that she thought he was. He's not doing the right thing. He's just destroying everybody in his own idea of peace.
He says we'll bring peace. He says we're going to end the war and we're going to vanquish the Jedi and the Sith. We will destroy the Sith, is what he says.
But he kills the Jedi.
But Padme's not a Jedi. Anakin's in love with Padme. He just wants to flee this planet and not become Darth Vader, which is what kills Padme in the end.
What kills Padme isn't that his name is Darth Vader.
The name has nothing to do with it, I guess, but the transformation is what does it.
She asks him, did you really do all of those things? Did you kill those younglings?
Because he became Darth Vader.
He did all
this after he became Darth Vader.
And how is that result any different than going back and doing all the exact same things under a different plan? The only difference is the person that's calling these things into action. Whether it's the Emperor saying, we need to kill all the Jedi, or this son saying, we need to kill all the Jedi, how is that in any way different? In either case, he's killing innocent people, and Padme is going to be heartbroken by that, and she's going to die. So in either case, he's going to descend into rage and become dark. So really the only thing that changes is that Anakin doesn't get this mech suit that makes him breathe funny. He's still going to be a really dark dude that has no wife. Like, it doesn't change the fact that Padme dies. And as we know, Padme was the most important thing to Anakin Skywalker.
But in this instance, we know that doesn't happen. But to Anakin, in this moment, he's seeing a future where Padme dies. That's what he sees. And the sun is giving him an alternative, and that's what he's going for. He doesn't know that what's going to happen. All he knows is this concrete future, which he believes is concrete, that has been shown to him. So he's obviously going to take the path that the sun is offering to him, because it involves, to him, not to us, because we can extrapolate. We can say, okay, he's going to go do a bunch of crap. He's going to make Padme upset. He's going to become a dark jet person. He's going to become a dark person because of this. That's what... It makes sense that he takes the sun's path, because it doesn't involve him losing Padme.
Sure, in that moment when he's essentially poisoned by the sun. But that changes 5 minutes later when they all get their way out of the well.
Don't even... Okay, and then the father, Anakin just runs right into the father again, as somehow after they get out of this volcano well, and...
Small planet.
Jeez. Just bumps into the father again. The father's like, you have to forget everything we just showed you. And he takes his finger and he boops him on the forehead. It is a boop if I've ever seen one in anything. This is what Alanis Morissette does at the end of Dogma. Just a little boop right in the forehead, right in the nose, just being like, whoa, you forgot it all. So literally everything that came in this episode is forgotten. Not the entire story arc, though, which is just infuriating to me, that the father just erase what you remember, erase that vision of the future, because it has to happen. So which I respect that, we're keeping a definite future for this story. The father's like, this has to happen. This is destiny, and this we have a lot of this movie already happened, so we need to make sure it goes. But that is insane to me, that they're just they boop it and make it all go away. The entire what was the point of showing us that? His Force future, his Force vision.
Well, I mean, he couldn't remember that after leaving. If he did, it would change the course of everything.
You're right, and it just seems like such a stupid time waster. Just a way to fill 22 minutes. Just let's show him this vision. We got to bring Vader in this season. We got to make some more hints to him being dark, because it's the last season, we did that whole thing where he interrogates the witness in a really forceful manner, and that's his dark side coming out. We got to show it this time. But this time we're actually going to show Vader and the breathing thing. So, but don't worry, now it has no consequence at all. It was just for the audience in that case. And like, okay, so all of Star Wars is fan service then. Say it that way then. Okay, like Force Awakens, all the things that they throw back to the Falcon. And
well, they have to put those things there. I mean, look in the comics, like when Leia walks into that hangar on Naboo, Darth Maul, like the image of Darth Maul just kind of pops into her mind, and she just like grows cold. And that's an awesome moment.
Yeah.
I think that's a great moment. And they do similar things in Rebels. Like, I haven't got to the episode yet. I'm kind of trying to catch up, but
I'm not upset about fan service. I'm upset that they're implying it means something greater and that they're trying to use it as a story device. If they're trying to dress up fan service as anything besides fan service, it really bothers me. If they can find a way to actually make it useful, awesome, but not if you're going to boop it away. If you're just going to boop away something, which they had to do, they had no choice, then they shouldn't have just put it in the first place. They should have just left it at like, awful things will happen. He's like, well, okay. Oh, I guess that makes sense. Like, Padme's going to die. I got to go with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not really for the characters. It's for us. It's for the audience to think about the possibilities of the Force, and if something were to change in the course of Anakin's life, what would that mean? It kind of seems like a cop-out when you're thinking about the plot of this story arc. Like, okay, you had all this stuff happen, and then you just completely negate it.
Yeah.
Like, in several seconds. You completely negate an entire half hour's worth of material. But for us, like, that kind of puts us in the headspace that, like, people are starting to become aware of the things that are going on in Anakin's life and his importance to the universe at large, and not necessarily that he's just going to destroy the Sith, or that possibly he may become the Sith. And when we go back to the I guess when we get to the later episodes of the Clone Wars, and when we get to the episodic movies in the prequels, we get that bigger picture that's starting to come in play after the events of this story arc actually happen. So it's more for us than anything else. Obviously, like, it's a huge departure for the Clone Wars. Like, it was much different than anything we've seen so far, and really, it's a lot different than anything we see later, with the exception of one more story arc that I've mentioned before concerning Yoda near the end of what we actually get to see in the Clone Wars series.
I don't know, that whole booping thing is just like, I feel like the writers were just we just have these people in a writer's room being like, oh crap, we just did that. Well, I guess we can't rewrite it entirely, so let's just do this at the end of it. Let's just take care of it. It just... such a weird, like, it's not a Deus Ex, but it's something. Okay. So then we get back to the part we talked about before, where the father kills himself with the sword, which, you could stretch it and say the sword controls the son by him stabbing himself, and the son comes to his, like, why'd you do that, Dad? Okay, so here's another issue. We have, in the second episode, I think, the daughter is like, did you hurt our father? And the son's like,
he is just so selfish and was taking too long to die, so I decided to move things along now.
Implying the son really wants the dad to die. But then when the father dies, the son is really upset about it. So upset that he doesn't notice Anakin sneak up behind him and stab him.
It's like I said, it's because he took that away from him. He wanted to be the one that killed him. He wasn't going to wait for time. He was out of patience. He wanted to be the one that killed him, to take that power away from him, the power that he's been holding over him, keeping him on Mortis all this time. He wanted to take that away. So when the father took that away, like, he I think all at once, like, so many emotions are coming into play, but he's angry because he didn't get to do it himself, and he's devastated because that part of him that still loves his father and cares for his father realized that what he was going to do was terrible, and it caused his father to take his own life to prevent him from doing that terrible thing.
Well, close. Yeah. I mean, but the father says that the father and the son's power are tied. So if the father dies, the son also loses power as well. But the father gets really messed up by some red force lightning in the second episode. So if the father's if the father's power is tied to the son, how is the father goes in like a coma or something like that? So what is going on? Is that a thing? Like,
it seemed to me that the son was gaining power as his father lost it, because there was less control over him.
But then why would the father kill himself then?
To take it all away. I mean, there was no control, but at that point, like, the son is also gaining power by taking it away. Like, that's part of the dark side. It's that selfishness, that take, not give. So by taking it away, he would get more power, and the father just took that away from him. Didn't
Okay,
give him
I
the
get
choice.
that, because I amongst all the concepts brought to the table in this arc, the idea of selfishness versus selflessness, I think, are the two that stand out to me. Is okay, I get that.
Which kind of leads into the father's final warning on Mortis. As he's dying, his last words were, "Beware your heart," and that was obviously for Anakin and the selfishness that he's going to come into. To save his wife. The only thing that he wants, he has to do these awful things. So while following his heart and following that selfishness that leads him to the dark side and into the way of the Sith, like that's what Mortis was warning him about.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing right now. It's just that death scene where he's like,
But beware your
Well, heart's that great, like, breathy last word,
I know, but it just reminded me so much of Monty Python, where he's like,
"He who is valiant and pure of spirit may find the Holy Grail in the castle of..."
I laughed so hard, and my roommate's like, "What are you laughing at? This guy's dying." I'm like, it's just the way he's delivering this line. He's just, I can just see him writing on the wall and just writing.
I love that movie.
Okay, so then the father dies, and then Mortis dies also. The planet dies. The crystal falls down, and everything starts dying around them.
Yeah. And then everything disappears.
And then they wake up on the shuttle again.
Yeah.
It was all a dream.
And Rex is there and like, oh no, it's just been a couple seconds. Like, like any time travel movie.
No, you know what this is really like? This is Inception. This is the last scene in Inception. I won't spoil the very end of it, but I will say this is a bunch of characters on an airplane, all sharing a dream together. And that is so funny to me.
I didn't like that movie.
You didn't like Inception?
No, I didn't think it was as clever as I thought it was.
Oh my god, I would take so much flack for this. I think that's Nolan in general. Like, I think all of his Batman movies are. I love watching all of his movies. I will say Chris Nolan makes some amazing movies.
They're
with
very
really,
well made movies,
like weird concepts. But God, they don't make sense at all. But that's okay. So maybe that's what's going on here, is that we're just given a bunch of stuff, and if you take it at face value, it's so conflicting. It's just like there's so many weird ideas being posited, and none of them are being backed up. Some of them are being contradicted, and you really just have to the only way to process this episode arc is to just take. Choice, just pick and choose, just cherry pick your concepts and stick with them and be like, okay, this is what I'm taking from this. I'm just going to forget about the rest. I'm going to Men in Black neuralize myself to forget.
Yeah, you take from it what you will.
I'm going to boot myself in the forehead to forget this arc. And
for me, one of the biggest takeaways was, not so much the story, but what the entire thing embodied. What does Mortis mean? What does the planet or this place, this conduit of the Force, Mortis, what does it mean? In Latin, Mortis means death.
Okay.
So to me, like, to conquer death is to be truly evil or truly alive, depending on the point of view. So with the father taking his own life, that was him as his last act, giving his life for his son so that he didn't take that final step to becoming truly evil, which is what he, truly would have been. He would have been fully evil and a major danger to the entire galaxy if he would have done it himself. And the same theme keeps occurring over and over in Star Wars. That's what makes Star Wars so many times, and that's why they kind of keep going back on the same tropes with, like, the father reveals and, like, having to kill somebody that is close to you in some way, usually a relative or something like that. So that's what I took from it. It's this push and pull of the light side and the dark side, the ongoing flow of the Force, and like what balance actually is, and how death plays into that. To me, it wasn't about Anakin and whether or not he's the chosen one, because to me, that never mattered too much, because I always like to think about the Force on a grander scale and how it's always going to balance itself out in the end. And Anakin might be, he might have a role in that. He's definitely an important character into the way that the Force ebb and flows at this point in this galaxy, at this point in time. But the Force has been around much longer than the Jedi, much longer than the Sith. So it's bigger than all of that. And this episode kind of took us out of the smaller story that we've been paying attention to for so many years. Like, Star Wars to us is very much about the Skywalker storyline. It's about Luke. It's about Anakin becoming Vader and all the struggles that come into that and all the parties that they join up with. So Empire versus the Rebels and the Resistance versus the First Order. Like, there are always parties battling it out to gain power, but that's just the way it is. And that's just the way the Force moves. So this kind of took us out of that. It had characters that we were familiar with, but it took us into this more mystical and greater area of the story that was more about the Force and the bigger picture at play. Not so much about, the Clone Wars, this tiny struggle in the grand scheme of things. It's not really that big on a universal scale. It's important to this galaxy and to these characters that we follow and that we love. But these 3 episodes remind us that the Force is much bigger, and it, no matter what happens, like, the Force is going to push and it's going to pull, and light will resume power, and then the dark will. Like, it's a constantly ebbing and flowing source of energy. So that's why I liked these episodes, and I can see why a lot of people would kind of look at this and just kind of shake their head and poo-poo it, because it's off the track of the story, and like, how does this really play into everything? But for me, it was less about how it plays into the Anakin storyline and more about kind of how everything works. And it made me look at the bigger picture and look at the timeline that we do know and see how the Force kind of moves things around, rather than the individual parties at play and their power struggle that goes between them.
I'm glad you took something away from it, because I sure as hell didn't. I feel like all I want from this episode is to just read like the IMDb commentary or like the trivia and be like, yeah, after this episode was written, the writers really kind of shrugged and were like, I don't know what we just did. I like just to be like, yeah, that was just, we needed 3 episodes. That's all I want out of this, is just for someone to be like, this was nothing for me.
Well, you are free to feel that way. They went on for several more seasons after this, so I don't think they were completely out of ideas. Not enough seasons, in my opinion.
What an arc,
Definitely different. I'm excited for you to keep going, because, there's definitely a lot more to the Clone Wars that...
I'm definitely going to keep going.
You're getting through it. Season 3, you've been watching it for, 2 or 3 months now?
Yeah, that's pretty much consistently watching it, yeah.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
It hasn't turned me off from the Clone Wars, because I know that there's so much good in the Clone Wars that I've seen. Mm-hmm. I feel like this episode just encapsulates our views on the Clone Wars in general. It's just...
Well, I was kind of worried. Like, the Clone Wars is a very broad thing. It covers a lot of ground.
It does.
And it's a great show. It's easily one of my favorite animated television shows of all time. Like, it's just great. Apart from it being Star Wars, which I obviously love, I think there are great themes to it.
Yeah.
And I think the tone is special, because it's a kid's show, but it's something that I can take things away from in my adult life. So it was very unique, and I was really sad when it ended. And I think this was a good arc to talk about, because it was so different. And that kind of makes it a standout. And you can talk about why the Clone Wars was so cool, but also kind of dig into exactly what made this different than the rest of it. So
yeah, and I guess in general, my take of the Clone Wars is that it is a really great television show that expands upon something we don't get to see a lot of. Like, we want to see what happens in between the movies, and we got to in this case. And what I take away from the Clone Wars is that there's a lot of good story, but at the same time, this is a TV show, and that's evidenced by the episodes, like the Jar Jar Binks episodes, which I haven't skipped, but I am very inclined to. I would very much.
I like the ones where he saves the day. I think those
wrong.
are fun.
What you said is wrong.
Have you seen the one where he saves Padme when he swims down and he makes friends with that giant beast?
Everything you're saying is making me very angry right now. There is one Jar Jar episode that he. Do you remember the one? Do you remember the one? Do you remember the one where he? They're basically trying to get trade supplies in. Like there's a blockade in this planet, and they're trying to get some trade supplies passed, and he has to do the whole dance in front of like this table of Toydarians. And okay, so that was moose caca. That was terrible. But the events that surrounded that episode, where the clone commander and the Jedi are like cut down by a droid army, like they're the last two standing. That was a really like Butch Cassidy moment for me. You know, just seeing these two things, and that's what I love about the Clone Wars, is that they juxtapose like this goofy, like, you know, we got to sell toys, we got to do 22 episodes, 24 episodes a season, you know, we got to fill out this time, and we have, you know, like 6 days to air on this one, which I think they had more than that for production time, but, you know, they were definitely crunched. But then juxtaposing that whole, like, commerce mentality with, you know, really interesting kind of like scenes from this war, because it is a war. You know, there are episodes, like I said, where they're torching the inhabitants of Geonosis, you know, like with flamethrowers. They're just showing it. No cutaway.
Yeah. Well, they completely destroyed that planet. That comes into play in the comics, which was really interesting. That tie-in was like, it was kind of heartbreaking, because like the Geonosans were never people that we really pitied much, but I mean, they were just kind of bugs, and that's what they were. They were a hive. Yeah. Like they had a queen and everything. And that scene in the comic with the queen, that kind of like, she just started making, after she became barren because of all the poison that they dumped on there from the war, like she just kept making children out of
droids and stuff. Yeah.
Droids, which was really creepy. Yeah, it was really creepy, but really kind of like, oh wow, that's interesting. That's different.
But in that arc, seeing like this very human side of war, and seeing these Jedi just holding out until the trade supplies can get pushed through to the inhabitants of this planet, I thought that was great. But then you mix that in with the Jar Jar stuff, and you're like, well, half of this was good. and that was the Clone Wars for me. And that.
There's a good mix of stuff, and I think the themes get a little darker in tone as it goes on, and maybe that played a part in why it didn't last. You know,
it lasted.
It had a good run, and I think they had a lot of good story. But they ended it short. They had more planned, and they had to cut it short.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah. I mean, there are entire arcs that didn't make it. The book Dark Disciple was a unused arc from the Clone Wars, and there are, I think they actually put on the Clone Wars website some unfinished episodes that were like in the middle of the animation process. So some of the scenes are done. Some of them are like basically just stand-in block figures that tell the episode. All the voice animation, everything was done, but some of the frames are just like storyboard art and stuff. Yeah, it sucks. Like they could have at least finished off the last bit, but they got canceled. So kind of sucks.
Looks like Jar Jar wins in the end.
Jar Jar had nothing to do with it.
Commerce, Jacob. Commerce wins in the end.
Had nothing to do with it. The last arcs were some of the better ones, man. Just wait till you see the last one they actually finished. It's so good.
Anything is better than this Mortis piece of...
Actually, you're probably going to hate it.
No, it's not that I hate the mystical stuff.
I think it's so good,
I hate
so you're
the
going to hate it.
contradictory stuff. I don't know. If I wake you up in the middle of the night again after I finish an episode, I apologize, but that's my rage.
The entire saga is rife with contradiction. If you don't like contradiction, you're in the wrong franchise, my friend.
It's not... it's just... we're done.
Someday we're going to talk about something we both like.
We have. I think we have.
Yeah, probably. There's a couple books I have in mind.
Well, that'll be next.
All right, well, I think that about wraps it up for this episode of Bantha Fodder. This has been episode 9. You can find the show notes for this episode at banthafodder.fm/episode/9. There you'll find links to some of the stuff that we've been talking about in this episode, a couple of links to the Wikia pages regarding certain characters. And
check out these episodes on Netflix if you got them. They're all there. You got all the Clone Wars on Netflix. So season 3, episodes 15, 16?
15, 16, and 17. Yep.
Check them out if you want to be as equally frustrated as me.
Or as pleasantly surprised as me. So you can find us on Twitter at Bantha Fodder FM, or you can find us individually at Mike Kamate or at Jacob Tender. You can hit us up on Facebook or follow us on YouTube and Instagram. Like, we're kind of all over the place now. We've been posting a lot of pictures on our Instagram, including some holiday cards, which is a new territory we're trying to get into, trying to diversify that portfolio.
Oh, man.
So follow us there, and we'll try to keep you entertained. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for bearing with us on this one. Say goodbye, Jacob.
No!
My notes for this show just say, why?